They thought he was just an old black doorman. But within minutes, he brought an entire restaurant to silence and the whole country to its feet. Few knew, he once sat across from the president and chose to walk away from it all, to mop floors for a reason no one could have imagined. Ladies glided to a stop in front of La Lumière. Robert Louis was already standing at his post, just like every other day. In his hand, a soft cloth. His white shirt had faded with time, his collar frayed. His back was slightly hunched, but his eyes, they were firm, steady, unshakable. A middle-aged couple stepped out of the car. Robert gave a slight bow, opening the door with a gentle motion. "Good evening, folks. I hope you have a lovely dinner." No one responded. They walked past him as if he were invisible. He wasn't offended. He was used to it. After 12 years standing at that door, he'd seen every kind of glance, the pitying, the dismissive, the quietly disgusted. But he always greeted them anyway, not because they deserved it, but because he held on to his own dignity. Restaurant. It was a silent citadel of the elite. The kind of place where CEOs ordered wine by its vineyard, not its label, where everything from posture to perfume was part of the performance. And tonight, another prestigious family was due to arrive. A luxury Range Rover pulled up to the curb. The rear door opened first. Out stepped a tall white man, face familiar from years on television. Retired Judge Gerald Whitman. His wife followed, Darlene Whitman, chair of the statewide Nutrition Foundation, known for her tagline, "Compassion begins with presentation." Trailing them were their 2 adult children. Madeline Whitman, the sharp-tongued legal analyst who made a career dissecting high-profile trials on television, and Brandon Whitman, the youngest CEO of a fintech AI firm, recently profiled in Forbes as a voice redefining the next generation. And with that, the name Whitman crossed the threshold, and the entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. Robert stood tall, offering his usual warm smile. "Welcome back to La Lumière, Whitman family. Wishing you a peaceful evening." Brandon strode forward, pretending not to hear. As his shoulder brushed Robert's, he twisted his torso just enough to knock Robert off balance, like it was accidental. Madeline followed close behind, frowning. She leaned in and muttered, just loud enough for 2 nearby staff to hear, "Couldn't they hire someone cleaner?" Their mother, Darlene, heard it. She glanced at Robert, said nothing, and turned away, quietly reapplying her lipstick. The restaurant manager, standing nearby, caught Robert's eye. She hesitated, then looked away. Not a word. Robert returned to his spot, lifted his cloth, and gently began wiping the brass hinge of the door. An older woman in a gray cardigan passed by and gave him a gentle nod. He smiled and bowed slightly. "Wishing you a soft and beautiful evening, ma'am." She stopped, studied him for a second longer. "You remember me, don't you? I'm Mrs. Elise. My husband passed away here 5 years ago. You helped me into a taxi that night." Robert gave a soft nod. "I never forget the ones who say thank you." Mrs. Elise smiled quietly, then stepped into the restaurant. No one noticed them, but Robert remembered everything. The door closed behind her. A breeze swept through the entryway. The golden light overhead shimmered against the worn shoulder of Robert's shirt. And from inside, the laughter of the Whitman family rang out smooth, rehearsed, the kind of laughter that sounded like a door slamming shut between 2 different worlds. Almost forgettable sound. A delicate ding echoed through the ground floor lobby, where the elevator led to the VIP dining suite above. The elevator light flickered from green to red, and then blinked repeatedly. No warning, no voice, just silence. Inside the elevator stood a little girl, maybe 6 years old, in a white dress laced with pink trim, a lavender ribbon tied neatly in her dark hair. her small face pressed against the glass, eyes wide, searching. "Mom," she called, "why isn't it opening?" Her voice held only the slightest hint of worry. Then the lights inside the elevator began to flicker. The air inside turned still. The worry turned into panic. Her hands hit the glass. "Is anyone there? I'm stuck. Please, help me." Glasses clinked quietly. Soft French music hummed through the overhead speakers. No one noticed. Not yet. Then she screamed again, this time louder. "I can't breathe. Somebody, please." The cry cracked at the end, a strangled plea. Heads turned. The entire room shifted toward the elevator, but no one moved. The Whitmans sat closest to the elevator, just a few steps away. They had the clearest view. Madeline furrowed her brows. Her silver spoon paused over her truffle bisque. "Well, this is disruptive." Brandon didn't lift his eyes from his phone. She probably hit the emergency button by mistake. Their mother, Darlene, let out a long, tired sigh. "I've always said children don't belong in refined establishments like this." Judge Gerald Whitman glanced up, 1 second, then turned back to his red wine. The little girl kept banging on the glass, her tiny fists now trembling. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her voice cracked as she cried, "Please, someone help me. I can't breathe." A young server instinctively stepped forward, panic written across his face. But the restaurant manager caught his arm and pulled him back. Her voice was calm but firm. "Wait for maintenance. Don't cause a scene." No one moved. No one stepped forward. Except one man. Outside the automatic glass doors, where a breeze pushed in from the city street, Robert Lewis slowly set down his cleaning brush. He had been standing there all along, watching. His eyes locked on the child's through the crowd, through the glass, past the walls of silence. And then he moved. He stepped inside slowly, steadily. He wiped his hands against his faded pants. His soft-soled shoes made no sound, but each step struck the marble floor like a drumbeat. The manager blinked, startled. "Mr. Robert, what are you?" "The girl's in distress," he said. "I need the backup circuit schematic." "We've already called the technician. Please, sir." 3 minutes, he said firmly. "If you let me work, the elevator will open in 3. The sentence wasn't loud, but the entire lobby fell completely still. Robert walked toward the auxiliary control panel behind the bar. The young server rushed over, silently handing him a key. No one tried to stop him this time. He opened the metal panel rows of relays, copper lines, switches. His fingers trembled slightly, but moved with practiced confidence, like a conductor conducting a storm. In the elevator, the little girl was gasping now, her hand pressed against the glass weakly. The lights inside flickered one last time. Then a chime. The doors slid open manually, and Robert was already there, lifting her gently into his arms. She burst into sobs. The room didn't erupt in applause. It didn't have to. The silence was louder. People stood up, stunned. Some raised their hands to clap but stopped mid-air. They didn't know what to do. The little girl's mother came rushing forward, tears falling. She wrapped her arms around her daughter and looked at Robert, breathless, overwhelmed. "Oh God, thank you. How did you know what to do?" Robert gave her a gentle smile and lowered his head. "I designed that system," he said softly, "a long time ago." The girl, still hiccuping from tears, looked up at him with glassy eyes. "Are you a superhero?" He chuckled faintly. "No, sweetheart. I've just fixed a lot of old elevators in my time." A young receptionist had been filming the entire thing, not just Robert's actions, but also the stone-faced Whitmans, unmoved as a child cried for help. Within hours, The video was everywhere on social media. The first headline read, "Elite family watches child trapped in elevator. Black doorman steps in and stuns the nation." Later that evening, in a rare late-night special, the local news aired the clip. Robert Lewis carrying the little girl from the elevator. The caption across the screen read, "Robert Lewis, former MIT professor, designer of military emergency escape systems, recipient of the Presidential Civilian Medal, now works as a doorman at La Lumiere." And that wasn't even the biggest shock. The same young woman uploaded a follow-up. No one knew that Robert had once been offered a seat on a federal advisory panel at the Pentagon and declined. He had chosen instead to spend his later years building a foundation, Mechanics for Dignity, a free training program in mechanical trades for underprivileged black youth and formerly incarcerated citizens. Every graduate of the program crafted a project engraved by hand with the same words, "Your hands matter even when the world pretends they don't." That night, the restaurant lobby sat in stunned quiet. The Whitmans remained at their table, but the laughter was gone. A man at the next table leaned in and muttered under his breath, "They'll never do in a lifetime what that man did in 3 minutes." The video titled "Doorman Saves Girl as the Elite Sit Frozen" had surpassed 3 million views. The media couldn't stop talking about it. Twitter lit up. One former student from MIT posted, "He once told me, 'You don't need a stage to change the world, just the courage to step forward when it matters.'" The hashtag number Robert Lewis spread like wildfire, and another began to trend. Number Lumiere Silence, a quiet indictment of those seated closest to danger, who did absolutely nothing. The Whitman family was quickly swept into the storm. The raw footage didn't just show the rescue. It captured their expressions of quiet disdain, their dismissive words, their deliberate silence. But the consequences didn't come from courtrooms, they came from the community. Madeline lost her television contract. Viewers sent in thousands of emails demanding accountability. Brandon was forced to resign from his company for damaging the ethical image of the leadership team. Darlene was asked to step down from the board of her own charitable foundation, a quiet but firm statement that said, "You no longer represent what we stand for." As for Judge Gerald, he remained silent, just as he had through countless verdicts over the years. This time, it was his own legacy on trial, and the world delivered its ruling. Changed. The next morning, he stood exactly where he always had at the front door of La Lumiere, cloth in hand, bowing gently to each guest, as if no one had ever spoken his name aloud. Then a car pulled up. The little girl from the elevator, now bundled in a red coat, stepped out, holding a rolled-up drawing in her hands. Her parents followed quietly behind. She approached Robert slowly, a little shy, and held out the paper. "I drew this for you." It was a wax crayon, drawing Robert standing at the restaurant door. Behind him, faint but unmistakable, was the silhouette of Martin Luther King Jr., his hand resting gently on Robert's shoulder. At the bottom, written in wobbly child handwriting, "He stood by the door, but he opened so many more." Robert looked down at the picture, then up at the girl. The morning light caught the corner of his eye, or perhaps it was a tear. He placed a hand over his chest and said softly, "You understand more than most grown-ups ever will." Cut to a different scene. Inside Robert's tiny room, barely large enough for a bed and a bookshelf, hangs a faded photograph of Martin Luther King Jr., hand raised, standing in a sea of people. Beside it, a worn-out Bible, its pages yellowed and dog-eared. One verse is underlined, folded at the corner. "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Matthew 5-9. There were no medals on the walls. No framed interviews, no applause. Just a man living as he always had, except now, people began to bow back. They mounted a new brass plaque beside the entrance. For 12 years he opened the door for thousands, but on that day, he opened the door for a nation. The story didn't end with fireworks. It ended with quiet clarity, a kind of awakening. Because sometimes, heroes don't wear capes. They wear threadbare shirts. They carry a cloth. And they keep their heads held high even when the world looks down. And as Dr. King once said, the time is always right to do what is right. Moved you, share it forward, because kindness like his deserves to be remembered. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what dignity truly looks like.